Sweden. Sweden is a marvelous country, capable of producing both whatever the hell this is, as well as nightmares beyond your comprehension on a daily basis, back to back. I have been to Sweden twice in real life and I have enjoyed it plenty. I love the country and I have even been learning the language and failing miserably at that. However, the last time I went to Sweden in a video game, it went like this. What? What the fuck? Yes, I'm fighting all of this! But today I'm going to get my revenge. I'm going to be going back and becoming Sweden's protector of nature. However, I'm not going to be becoming one of those pathetic and dumb-ass protesters who glue themselves to streets and then ruin legendary paintings before they're very quickly going home and complaining on Reddit how AI art is ruining actual art. No, I am going to be leading the Wood Elves, and I'm going to be doing that in total Warhammer 3. So join me today as I try to fulfill my duty. Be sure to check out the previous two parts I've done where I played Kislev and Bretonia so that you know more what my stance is on this game, how I do things, and all the other stuff. And with our mods installed and our bows ready to fire, let us begin. Yet again, I decided to watch a boatload of lore videos before playing as this faction, and I'm happy to announce that unlike usually where I realized this doesn't have an effect on the video at all, this time it actually made the gameplay worse. The first foul omen was that my Gunnar mod was not changing the title screen, so I was going into this faction very worried, and then I began to read through all the mechanics and I got increasingly more worried. Let me start off with the best one first, and shockingly this one comes from a mod. So, another Wood Elf faction, one that I don't have access to, has a mechanic called limited recruitment, where specific units can only be recruited with a very specific building, and when you recruit them there's only like a 30% chance or so that you can recruit them again next turn, so you gotta wait until they actually appear again. And this mod also brings that mechanic over to the faction I'm playing, the Sisters of Twilight, and also adds to it by allowing you to upgrade those units once they reach a certain unit rank. So yeah, that's kinda cool. Our second mechanic are the offices, where you can appoint your lords political positions which will grant them specific buffs. It's cool, I guess. I just wish there was actually some politics involved in this. The faction-specific mechanic of the Sisters of Twilight is the Forge of Dave. So basically every time you win a battle there's a chance that you can win a favor point for the legendary blacksmith Dave. He can craft you legendary items or also apply you a buff for 5 turns. I think this mechanic is cool. I would just like it if you could not get items any other way but this forge, because currently you can just also get very good items by just playing the game normally and not engaging with the system at all. But now, the big one. The mechanic that makes the Wood Elves one of the most unique races to play in the game. Put on your smart boy glasses, it's going to get very complicated. Absolutely everything you've learned about this game, forget it. Run it over. Kill it. Because the Wood Elves are not capable of capturing settlements. The only thing you can do is turn them into shrines that give you such small buffers that they are absolutely useless, or raise them to the ground for lots of money, so it's very obvious what you're going to be doing. No, the only settlements that you can control are magical forests, and you start off with all of them under your grasp at the start of the game. So instead of expanding your territory, this campaign is all about protecting these forests and confederating with other Wood Elf factions to get a hold of all of the forests, because you're going to be needing them if you want to make the biggest forest go super forest mode, and that's the Oak of Ages in the middle of Athel-Loren, because doing that will give you insane buffs that basically win you the game. Luckily you don't need to go across the entire map, because once inside of a magical forest, an army can just straight up teleport to whatever magical forest they desire using the deep roots. Now then, how do you actually finish your job with one of these magical forests? It's rather simple yet also rather complicated. You need to fight and win battles in close proximity to them to slowly but surely restore their health, so you can then upgrade them. And because the game doesn't expect you to be at war with everyone always, because the Wood Elves are actually more of a pacifist faction than anything else, random forest encounters will also be spawning in near them, allowing you to slowly get their health up naturally, if the mechanic actually works, but I'll get to that later. Every time you upgrade a forest, one of these encounters can also spawn in which case you need to protect the forest from the enemy. And finally, once your forest is back to full health, you can perform the Ritual of Rebirth, in which case 3 armies all spawn in to attack the forest, meaning you gotta protect it from all 3 of them. And then once the Ritual of Rebirth is complete, you get a load of buffs as well as 1 amber, and amber can basically be used to unlock very powerful technology on the skill tree that's going to help you get the Yoke of Ages up and running. Whew, that was a lot. That understandably led to me having to restart this campaign 1,000 times over again before finally getting it right, because I was just really struggling to grasp all these new mechanics, but eventually I managed to defeat the tutorial Dark Elf faction, before I then had to protect my magical forest for the first time against a group of Skaven. My archers were doing an absolutely incredible job. I positioned them on some walls I had built, and they were completely shredding everything that the Skaven were throwing at them. Not a single army even got close to them. On the other side, my melee Wood Elves were having a little bit more problems with them getting swarmed by even the most lowly of rat people. While we won that battle pretty easily, it would go on to be one of the only ones of these forest encounter battles that I actually bothered to fight, and the only time I bothered to manually fight protecting a magical forest. That was mostly because every time you have to protect a magical forest, it's on the same map and the map sucks. Also, the Wood Elves don't have any unique combat music for them, which is why I'm using Kislev music right now, so that just really demotivated me. However, very soon there came the next forest encounter, and I knew I had to fight this one, because some Bretonnians had set foot on our lawn. We had caught them off guard in a masterful ambush, which made this battle a lot easier, and honestly, if it wasn't an ambush, I probably would have lost, because I still had no clue how to actually play this faction. I would, in the following few battles, slowly but surely learn the way of the Wood Elves. And I'd also learned that I had taken a wrong turn. As a surprise to absolutely no one, a faction which main gimmick is that it stays a lot in a single place, which is not that fun to put onto video. But don't worry, they were also not fun to play for me, because I had yet again increased the difficulty from the last episode. Now we were playing on normal campaign difficulty and normal battle difficulty. I had made it so that any of the game's endgame events could happen. No longer did I have a choice which one would be happening. And we still had the goal of completing at least one of this faction's victory routes. The only things I had made easier for myself were that the enemies were now -4% weaker again, and that I would still need to try and take over both Cologne and Kislev, but I wouldn't need to do it on the campaign. I could do it later in the skirmish mode, at the cost of the battle being a lot harder than it would be if I did it on the campaign. Speaking of the campaign, the Broken Chains had just declared war on me and were now encroaching on my big ass tree. So I laid an ambush for them, and the auto resolve was telling me that I would be taking some heavy losses. So I manually fought this ambush, and holy shit, was it a bloodbath. Pretty much right away the orcs took the upper hand. The fight began to completely destroy my ranged infantry, and my close range infantry would follow right after, as these mystical elves that had lived for entire decades on end training and honing their skills were absolutely beaten to a pulp by the average visitor of an anime convention. I'm pretty confident the only reason I won this is because I had these flying bird archers distract a lot of the orcs' melee infantry, and they also had some pretty powerful magic shots, meaning they could actually do some damage as they kept them at bay. We won that battle with a lot less losses than the auto resolve told me, only for the game to spawn in a second orc army out of literally nowhere and insta-kill me, so I had to reload and auto resolve that battle anyway, yoo-hoo. On the next try, I did then manage to finally perform the ritual of rebirth on my magical forest, which meant that a lot of enemy armies had just spawned in and I needed to fight them. I auto-resolved 2 of them and manually fought a Skaven army in a desert, and I was slowly but surely understanding how to play the Wood Elves, but I was still a long way away from actually mastering them. With our first magical forest finally fully healed up, I moved over into Athel-Loren so I could get to work on the Yoke of Ages. The Yoke of Ages, the massive buffs that it gives, are really not going to concern me at all, because my victory condition has nothing to do with it. I feel like Orion's campaign is a lot more fun, because you need to actually hop around the world and finish all the magical forests, so that the Oak of Ages can be activated a lot easier. But since I really didn't need the Yoke of Ages, I just kind of stood here, leveled it up a little bit, and then kept on confederating with other Wood Elf factions to get to work on other magical forests, where I don't know if it is a bug or if you're just supposed to begin a lot of wars, which I feel like would be out of character for the Wood Elves, but whatever. But I no longer had any forest encounters whatsoever, so my forests were growing at a snail's pace, making this already not that fun campaign just boring. My next order of business was to finally take out the Broken Chains by blotting out the sun with arrows. At this point I did have most of the Wood Elf roster unlocked, and they have a pretty large and cool roster, but I still felt like I was missing something, because despite having a gigantic army with some of the most powerful units the Wood Elves have, I was still suffering some heavy losses and I wanted to know why that was. Luckily that answer would come to me all on its own very soon. Athel-Loren is a gorgeous, magical place, with trees as large as cities, and magic more powerful than what any mere sorcerer could wield embedded into their ancient roots. Thus, the heroes and lords of the Wood Elves are all very powerful magic users and have some of the most insane spells in the game, like a spell that would come in handy later in this video that literally just freezes an entire army of enemies in place. While their infantry roster is gigantic, that doesn't mean that they are that versatile in their strategy. The melee infantry of the Wood Elves all follow a simple principle. They can dish out a lot of damage, but they cannot take a lot of damage. This means when they first charge in and hit the enemy, they'll do a lot of damage, and when the enemy is already low on health, they will very quickly make short work of them. However, if the enemy manages to hold their ground, the longer the battle goes on, the less effective the Wood Elf infantry becomes. On the entirely other side of the spectrum, they have their ranged infantry, which is some of, if not the best in the entire game. You've already seen it, their rate of fire is insane and so is their damage. Even the lowliest of bowmen can completely destroy any army that's trying to get close to them in a hail of arrows. In addition to that, they can also fire while retreating, which is just insane. And while they may not have any artillery units, many of their bowmen have an alternate ammunition which you can manually make them use that is incredibly powerful, magical, and also homes in on the enemy. The Wood Elves are also decent with cavalry, having some pretty strong yet also very expensive reindeer cavalry, and also having some much smaller but way faster ranged cavalry which you can perfectly use to lead the enemy wherever you want them to be. They also have some decent air units, most notably air units that can also shoot with bows, meaning if the enemy doesn't have any ranged units in their team, they can literally not win ever. The biggest thing that I find interesting is that while they have a lot of air units, they don't have anything that can actually fight in the air. So like if Bretonnia comes along with their Hippogriffs and Pegasus Knights, you are still going to lose, but at least you have a big ass dragon, so there's that. The animal mod I installed also allows you to use varying animals of nature as little skirmishy predators to fall into the backs of your enemies. Is that a bullfango? And finally, let us talk about the Zodes and the Treemen, because those are the only actual frontline units you're going to be getting. The Zodes are really cool, powerful, like cavalry human lizard guys that have self-healing skills, meaning you can make them hold out for a long time. And then you of course have the Treemen, which while very expensive and obviously entirely useless in sieges, and trust me, we'll get to that, are basically unbreakable, meaning like good luck getting these guys to rout ever, and they can also tank a boatload of damage. Just make sure that the enemy doesn't have an inch of fire in their arsenal, because then you're fucked. All of this should now tell you exactly how you're supposed to play the Wood Elves. They are a skirmish faction. They are all about taking their fast units to separate one big enemy army into smaller batches, and then ambushing the shit out of those smaller batches with small batches of one's own to very, very quickly take out the army piece by piece. The Wood Elves don't do that well in large-scale combat, and I finally understood that when I did the story quests of the Sisters of Twilight, because in these I had a 40 stack of an army, a gigantic army, the largest army you can even have, and it was incredibly hard to control them. I only barely managed to get a Pyrrhic victory, but then a second army I was sending all the way up into Dark Elf territory because there was a settlement I needed to capture for my victory. I had a super small army attacked by a much larger army of greenskins, and despite that I managed to pull off an even better victory than I had in the story quest.
That's quite big.
At the start of the battle I sent my monsters as well as my cavalry charging forward, while I sent my bowmen into one forest and my swordmen into a different forest at the other end of the map. The cavalry quickly did their job of getting the enemy's attention before then running back toward the forest in which I had hidden my archers. Once the enemy got close enough, they were pounded by more arrows than they could possibly handle, and the enemies that did survive the onslaught were quickly locked in place with a spell that I had unlocked, making them literal target practice. This cycle repeated itself again and again until these archers had taken out most of the enemy's weaker units. My monsters and my swordsmen respectively were also taking on smaller parts of the army left behind, whittling them down before then going on to the next one, and with the smaller quantity of enemies, the Wood Elves could actually pull through. At least I wasn't until the orcs brought in a dinosaur they found fuck knows where, who proceeded to completely destroy my bowmen, but besides that little mishap at the end, this was a great victory. I finally understood how to play the Wood Elves. This was the final battle I fought with them, so this was utterly useless. The only thing that still happened is that with the same army, just with a few more units in, I then sieged the one town I needed to take for my victory, and already here I was realizing that sieging with Wood Elves was going to be a pain in the ass, because I mean, yeah, they have a lot of bowmen that can shoot over the walls, but they have basically no infantry to actually get over the walls or protect the battering ram. Still, because this castle was like the size of an apartment, the bowmen can completely shred everyone. But with the victory in hand, it was now time for the biggest sieges. The Siege of Cologne. And who would have thought that taking a faction that in the entire campaign is designed to not take over settlements or fight siege battles is not very good at siege battles. This is what I meant with the Treemen. They are your only real good frontline units, and they can't scale the walls and are also too expensive to just use as cannon fodder to protect the battering ram. Meaning, you are just screwed. I attempted to siege Kislev, but they completely eviscerated me because my flying units that could get over the walls had no HP. The infantry units that I did get on the walls also got completely destroyed, and an even worse fate befell those that actually got into the city. I tried this a lot, but every single time I failed. I did win the Siege of Cologne, but that was after many attempts, and I kid you not, an hour-long siege of just pure adrenaline. In the Kislev siege, I'd split up my army into smaller parts, trying to mimic the skirmish tactics, but that did not work at all. So for this siege, it was just all-out warfare. A bunch of Zods and a tree guy for healing taking the front, while all the bowmen came charging in from the behind to take out as many people on the walls as they could. Once the bowmen were dead, Bretonia brought in their Royal Lake Guard units, which ate arrows up for breakfast. So I pulled my bowmen back to preserve just a slight bit of ammo that they had left, and instead brought in my dragons to deal with these guys on the walls and force them down. The Bretonians were now bringing the cavalry towards the gates, which I found rather worrying because, as we all know, the cavalry is absolutely insane. So I brought my flying birds over the walls where there were no more archers left and began to take small pot shots at them to weaken them as much as possible before the battering ram reached the gate. When it did, the strategy changed completely. I sent all my flying units over the walls to begin to take out the other units hidden deep within Cologne, such as for example that napalm catapult, and also began to capture victory points because I knew I was not going to be taking them any other way. And guess what, I was proven right. Once those gates were open, it was just a mosh pit of my guys fighting against Bretonian peasants, and while my monsters managed to do a lot of damage, so did their horses and their lords. Needless to say, I mean, just look at this. Green Knight is stuck behind a door. What's going on?
Out of my way, son! Door stuck! Door stuck!
Can you tell what the hell is going on here? I sure as hell can't. And this is how the entire battle went over the gate. None of us ever backed down. No one ever decisively won. The only reason I managed to win the battle in the end is because my dragons and birds had taken over enough capture points. But with that, I had technically, just barely, if you really squint an eye, won. And the Wood Elf campaign finally took its damn end. So, if you're too heavy to get up from the chair and to move, then play the Wood Elf. So all you do is sit around and win. This is gonna have to be it for Total War Warhammer now for a little bit of a time, because I wanna play some other games. But when I will return, trust me, it's gonna be more insane than ever. See you all next time.